Essentially, the aim is to understand from practice, and we want to integrate academics with the practice. I come from academic background, so we want to learn from practice what is there, and we will try to explore a few things, and probably we will come out with some concrete solution or concrete ideas maybe that may be implemented in future. So the topic, and I'm afraid I don't have time for the introduction, so I'll not be introducing myself. So we will get into the topic straight away, and after this discussion during tea break, we can have our introduction and other things keep on going. So the topic is how much of brand love is just habit and convenience. This is a topic. Now, let me first try to get into this, and let me try to give academic perspective of brand love. When I appeared for interview at XLRI in 2012, at that time I used the word brand love because in Journal of Marketing, this was published at that point of time recently. And by the way, Journal of Marketing is within top 10 of all management journal, not about marketing, the number one. So in that paper, people have, or academicians have talked about a few dimensions of brand love. Self-brand integration, basically self-concept congruency, desired congruency, and then we have life meaning, something like that can be derived. And then we have another dimension. This is a very complex phenomena, passion-driven behavior, and in that willingness to engage with the brand, how much time in the past customer has engaged with the brand. And then we have positive emotional connection, particularly with regard to emotional attachment, what kind of things are there. And then we have got another variable that is called long-term relationship or anticipated distress. Distress is there. And then attitude valence, positive attitude valence, and attitude strength, not only valence, but strength. Now, I would invite your views. This is from academician perspective, theoretical perspective, and this has been published in Journal of Marketing. So how do you think this works in the Indian context, in the Indian scenario? So what are your views that I'll welcome?
So if I can start. So I think, so like you rightly pointed out various attributes, right? So only one thing I just wanted to check. So why specifically Indian scenario? Because essentially brand is something, beyond geographical boundaries, right? So maybe if we can, maybe expand the scope, I think it makes a lot of sense because a lot of quote unquote global brands are coming to India and vice versa, right? So a lot of Indian multinationals are abroad and that becomes a part of the global branding, right?
I agree with you, sir. I agree with you, sir. I agree with you, fully agree with you. We will go by global brand.
Yeah. So that was one thing I thought. So for me, personally, so we've all worked across industries, right? So what is the brand? So when I look at a brand, right? So for me, it means consistent performance, always, right? So for example, lately, one brand which I really like is Zepto, right? Come what may, right? It's there in 10 minutes. So to that extent, it's spoiling people's habits of going and fetching stuff. And if you compare the other players in this category, my own perception, right? Branding is perception also. I've not seen, initially the way users uses all the players available and then they converge to one which after comparing in their own minds is always been consistent in terms of what you think your outcome should be. Right. So I think brand encompasses all that. It gets crunched into one brand, right? Which signifies, consistent delivery of what is expected out of the product or service from a customer lens, right? So when you look at it from an organizational sense, you'll have your, attributes, your vision, your mission, so on and so forth converging into the brand. But when you look at it from an outside-in perspective, how a customer perceives is what ultimately matters, right? So I think, so somewhere that's how I would put the opening here in terms of looking at everything, A, globally, and B, everything from a consumer lens.
Two different disconnect out here. Because the brand per se, by definition, it is like human beings. It has certain character. it has certain values, and it stands for something. When you said brand, it's actually brand positioning, right? So a brand stands for a very specific value proposition, and it relates with you at the emotional level anyway. To the target consumers, it relates with the person and emotion. So you can say there are brand people who love, because I love this brand. Other one is that people will say I don't have a choice except to relate with this person or with this brand. There are other people who hate this brand because there are certain characters and values I don't like, right? So the way in which I personally look at it, we all have handled many brands, built many brands. Defining what this brand stands for a particular target group will define whether this brand has been able to create love, right? And second is that the category that you are in, which is a routinized purchasing behavior category, or is it a critical categories? It depends on the category of the business that you are in, is going to define whether deep love is required or surface level fleeting love is required. It depends on the category of the business. If you are buying a chewing gum, the brand chewing gum that you're going to buy, you may not have a great love, but you'll have some love for the brand. That's why you buy Wrigley's chewing gum, right? But not necessarily if you're looking at buying some life healthcare product, which is very dear to you. What I would say is that it has nothing to do with convenience. It depends on how well the brand is being positioned, right? So it's a love is definitely the higher end of the continuum of the brand architecture, right? So I would say let's look at brand as a human being, another human being I'm relating with. The touch and feel is very much there. If I buy a shampoo, if the touch and feel is not the same, diluted, now I go and fight to the manufacturer, saying that this is not the same one, this is not the same perfume that they used to. So it's like a human being. You relate with them as a human being. So I would like to.
Yeah. What you have stated is very right. Humanizing brand. As an academician, we have been working on that humanizing brand and brand personality, personification of the brand is there in academic world for a long period of time, and also there in practice world. For example, some brand is humanized in a certain manner, personality trait is there. You're very right in pointing out that. And you have also used the term convenience, all those things. Convenience is used from the perspective that many times we think brand loyalty as a repeat purchase. But in academic world, we think attitudinal loyalty, behavior loyalty. That is the one label. And then recent phenomena, recent literature on loyalty, it does not confine to attitudinal or behavior loyalty. It goes beyond that. For example, habit. And then we have got dependence, and then relationship. Then we have got price incentivized, situational incentivized. Those things are also coming into picture. For example, I'm in the habit of buying toothpaste, but attitudinally I'm not loyal to that brand. So maybe a little bit too contrasting situation, trying to figure out what is happening. So now I'm just given, since sir has explained, put that perspective, that is why I have to.
Brand is also very individual. It is not necessary that, everyone would pick the same. It's very individual choices that you make is very different. So it's not necessary that you would be probably driven by family also to make some choices. You might be driven by your own personal experience with a brand. So it's a very individual choice that a person makes. Like you go for Tatas, you go for buying a Tata car may not be because of Tatas per se, but you have a certain perception built about ground clearance, or you might have some perception built about a Mahindra car or a Honda car for that matter. So it's a very individual driven perspective with reference to brand as well. So as you mentioned, loyalty need not be only I might not do repeat purchase of that brand and that's why it is brand loyal. No, but it could be very specific and very individual choice over there. Like for Pharma, you may not have a choice. So there's no brand loyalty really, like as you mentioned, GSK. I mean, I'd probably buy GSK because my brother works in GSK. Again, my choice, not because I like the derma products that GSK gives or something of that sort. But then, and there's also Cadila. So if I have to compare Cadila, the antifungal this versus the GSK's derma product, so my choice may be that my brother works in GSK, so I'll buy GSK. So it's very individual as well. It would not be guided by a behavior, it could not be guided by an attitude, it could be driven by family. Rexona, Hamam, these products were not driven by, but these were family, or the traditional synthol, the green synthol that, even today my father-in-law buys only synthol. So it's very, 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 very individual, as I have experienced brand buying or brand purchase.
More deeper and understand the science behind how a customer kind of looks at it. And usually, all the examples that we're talking about is more retail perspective, right? Like today, what comes to your mind is more like a Zepto or a Zomato. I mean, just taking some examples here. But I think there is, to Sir's point, you should also look at what are the other brands and what are the other categories, right? So, I mean, the brand stands for an identity. Now, coming back to, what is really brand love and how you break it down, I think from the experience to, what some of the generations had to now, the new generations, which is the Gen Zs and the Alphas, their perception of brand love is very different, and technology has essentially enabled a lot more. It's just not the love; it's also the convenience or the laziness, for that matter, right? I mean, would I stick to Zepto just because I'm lazy to move to a different app or not? So I think there are a lot of other perspectives. So just kind of looking at an individual now, I think it's going to be a unidimensional lens, but rather we should look at a multidimensional lens, right? Bring in the tech, the data, the environment, the changing behavior of consumer. I mean, 30 years back, it was a very standalone funnel. Now the funnel is very different, and the categories are very different, right? Just kind of adding that flavor.